Sit quietly. Respectable people are gathered here. My father whispered angrily, holding my arm tight. The big chandeliers above the fancy table sparkled like frozen stars, shining down on everyone. The golden lights bounced off the silver forks and glasses. Laughter floated through the Millionaire's party, the big event my father called his social battlefield. I sat next to him, wearing a simple navy dress that made me look like I worked there. It was plain, but that was fine. I didn't want attention, yet. When I reached for my glass of water, Dad leaned over to the man across from us, a silver-haired boss with shiny glasses, and said loudly, "She is my foolish daughter. I apologize for her. My son is the real pride of our family." Everyone at the table laughed politely. My cheeks burned. I smiled a little, pretending it didn't hurt. But inside, it felt like ice had hit me. I wanted to disappear. The pride of the family, my brother Kalen, grinned like he had earned it just by existing. He wore a suit that cost more than my rent for a whole month. He didn't even look at me. He was too busy looking important. I wanted to stand up and leave, but I stayed. Tonight wasn't just dinner. It was my event. I had been working quietly with the organizing team for 6 months. They didn't even know I was my father's daughter. I had planned everything in secret. I had spent hours on the computer, writing, checking, and preparing presentations. I had talked to many people online and on the phone, making sure every detail was perfect. And now, tonight, everything will come together. The host walked to the microphone to announce the special speaker. My father straightened, expecting to hear his business partner's name. He puffed out his chest. But instead, the lights went down. The screen behind the stage lit up with my photo. The room went quiet for a moment. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer said, "please welcome the lead designer behind tonight's charity technology initiative, Miss Elara Veylin." My father froze. Everyone in the hall stood up and clapped. The sound of clapping was loud and strong, echoing off the walls. My father dropped his fork. My mother blinked, confused. Did he just say Elara? I stood up. Every heartbeat felt louder than the last. My legs shook a little, but I walked steadily. The host continued. Miss Veylin is the genius behind the AI sustainability platform that raised over $8 million in donations this quarter, changing how big companies give back. People turned to look at me. Phones came up. Cameras flashed. I saw my father's face, pale, mouth open, eyes looking from me to the screen where my achievements shone in gold letters. He didn't expect this. No one did. I walked to Veylin the microphone. Each step felt like I was taking back all the years I had been quiet and invisible. When I reached it, the clapping stopped. I smiled, calm but strong. "Good evening, everyone," I said. "It's an honor to finally meet the people behind the numbers we've been building for months." I never thought the girl who was told to sit quietly would one day be standing here speaking to all of you. The crowd laughed a little. This time it was warm and kind, not mean. They were happy for me. I could feel their eyes on me, not looking at my father. I looked at my father's table. He wasn't clapping. His hands were still holding his napkin like it was holding his pride together. My brother didn't even look at me. He was pretending I didn't exist. After the stage, the CEO my father had been trying to impress came over. "You're his daughter?" he asked, eyes wide. "Yes," I said softly. I think he was trying to figure out if that was good or bad. He laughed, impressed. My presentation was brilliant. I smiled faintly. Maybe my dad would be proud one day. Behind me, my father hadn't moved. The applause continued without him. Everyone else was clapping and talking about my work. When I returned to the table, no one spoke. Even the sound of knives and forks from nearby tables seemed too loud. Dad stared at his plate. The confidence and bragging he had earlier were gone. He looked like a man who didn't know what to do. Mom tried to save the moment. "That was impressive, Elara," she said, but her voice didn't feel real. It was too careful, too quiet. It didn't sound like she was really happy. Kalen, my brother, leaned back and muttered, "You could have told us." I smiled politely. "You could have asked," I said. My voice was calm even. I wanted to show him I wasn't scared. His jaw tightened. "You embarrassed Dad in front of everyone," he said angrily. I spoke calmly. I didn't embarrass him. He made a mistake the moment he called me foolish in front of strangers. My words hit him like glass breaking. People at the next table stopped talking, but clearly heard everything. I felt a little proud. I had always wanted to tell him. Now I did, and it was public. Then the event coordinator came with a bright smile. "Miss Veylin, the press wants a quick interview. They're especially interested in your work with Harperta's green energy division." The irony hit me. That was the company my father had been begging to meet for months. He had been planning to impress them. And now they wanted to talk to me. I smiled. Of course, I said. For the first time, my father didn't tell me to sit quietly. He couldn't. The cameras and flashes from the press felt unreal. I had spent years hiding in my father's world. Now I was standing in front of the same cameras that never noticed me. It felt exciting, scary, and wonderful all at once. A reporter asked, "Your platform is called the most important charity tech of the year. How did you make something better than 3 big company teams?" I smiled, careful but proud. Sometimes you have to be called foolish before you realize how strong you are. Some journalists nodded. They understood exactly what I meant. The interview went viral in hours. By morning, big news sites had headlines like, "Daughter silenced at gala becomes star of the night." Elara Veylin shocks the corporate world. Back home, my father's phone rang nonstop. Investors wanted me for future projects. It was funny how the people my father had been trying to impress now wanted me. The irony was not lost on me. The next evening, I went to the family house to drop off some documents from the foundation. The house was very quiet. Mom was arranging flowers that didn't need arranging. Kalen sat scrolling on his phone, pretending not to see me. The air was heavy with silence. I carried the papers carefully. My father sat in his study, looking at a big map on the wall. He didn't say anything when I walked in. I placed the documents on the table. "Here are the documents from the foundation," I said politely. He didn't look at me. He didn't speak. For a moment, it felt like the house was frozen in time. I walked to the door. "Good night," I said softly. Mom nodded without looking up. Kalen didn't respond. My father didn't move. As I left the room, I smiled faintly. Even though they didn't say anything, I felt a quiet victory inside. I had finally shown them who I was. They had ignored me for so long, but now everyone else knew my worth. And maybe someday they would too. I thought about the gala, the lights, the applause, and the cameras. I thought about my father's proud face disappearing into shock. I thought about my brother's tight jaw and my mother's careful voice. I realized something important. You don't always need someone's approval to know your own value. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen. Not just as a daughter or a sister, but as me. Elara Veylin, the person who worked hard, stayed quiet, and proved herself in a world that expected her to stay small. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the future. I would keep working, keep creating, and keep surprising people, including my family. One day, maybe my father would finally say, "I'm proud of you." But until then, I didn't need his words. I had the applause, the recognition, and my own confidence. Sometimes, being called foolish is the first step to discovering how amazing you can really be. And tonight I discovered it. Dad finally came out of his study. He walked slowly, and he seemed smaller than usual. His shoulders were slumped, and his hands were folded tightly in front of him. His voice was lower than I had ever heard it before. It was calm, but heavy with something I couldn't quite name at first. "You embarrassed me," he said. His voice did not sound angry. It sounded sad, like a deep hurt was hiding behind his words. "No," I said softly, trying to be gentle. "I didn't embarrass you. I just showed everyone who I really am. You never thought that person could be important." He did not answer. He just looked at me quietly. Then he said, "Just turn away." For the first time in my life, I did not feel small in that house. I did not feel like I had to shrink or hide. I felt bigger. Not because of anything I did, but because I finally saw my father as he was, not as someone untouchable. A week passed. No phone calls. No text messages. No emails. I wondered if he would ever speak to me again. And then, early one morning, a cream-colored envelope slid under my apartment door. I almost didn't see it, but something about it caught my eye. It was his handwriting. Precise. Neat. Careful. The kind he always used for business papers, where every letter had to be perfect. I picked it up slowly, my hands trembling a little. I carefully opened it and pulled out a short letter. It read, "Elara, I said things I can't take back. I thought being strong meant always being in control. I thought looking perfect and keeping up appearances mattered more than being real. Watching that room rise for you reminded me of who I used to be before pride took over. You became everything I failed to be. Not just successful, but respected." I sat there for a long time, holding the letter in my hands. My heart was pounding. I had waited my whole life to hear that my father was proud of me. But now that I had it, it did not feel like a victory. It felt sad. Heavy, but in a quiet way. That night, I met Soren, the gala organizer, for coffee. Soren had become a quiet friend through all of this, someone who knew parts of the story that few others did. "You're not celebrating," he said, noticing the letter next to my cup. I shrugged. I thought hearing that would make the pain go away. But it doesn't. It just makes it louder for a while before it slowly fades. He smiled faintly, a little like he understood more than he said. "It's not about fixing it, Elara. It's about realizing you don't need their applause anymore." The next morning, I did something I had never done before. I put the letter in a frame. But I didn't put it there as a trophy to show off. I put it there as a reminder. People can change, but only when reality breaks through their pride. And for the first time, my father didn't need a crowd to see me. He saw me quietly in silence, and that was enough. 2 weeks later, my phone buzzed. I almost dropped it. It was a message from my father. "Sunday dinner. Just family. I'll cook." I almost laughed out loud. My father, the man who had always believed kitchens were only for staff, was going to cook. I wasn't sure what to expect. But curiosity won over hesitation, and that evening, I drove to the estate. The same house where I had once felt invisible at every table. The dining room looked different. It was smaller, somehow. Warmer. Mom had swapped her big, sparkling centerpiece for simple candles. My brother Kalen wouldn't look me in the eye, but managed a stiff nod. And then my father appeared, walking out of the kitchen. He wore an apron, his hands busy wiping flour off his sleeves. "Lasagna," he said, achvailingly proud. "It's probably not very good. It wasn't perfect. The edges were a little burnt. The sauce was uneven. But it was the most human thing I had ever seen him do. And somehow, that imperfection made it feel honest, real. During dinner, I spoke. I spoke to the board. "We're donating half of my shares in Veylin Enterprises to your foundation." I froze as I said it, unsure what reaction to expect. "You don't have to do that," Dad said quietly. "I do," I said firmly. "You taught me what real value is. Not money. Not reputation. Purpose." Mom smiled weakly, like she was proud but trying not to show it too much. Kalen mumbled. "Dad has been reading all your articles. He even cried at one of them." "Kalen," Dad said, but his tone was gentle this time. For the first time in my life, we were not playing roles. We were not pretending to be perfect or polite. We were just a family, imperfect, scarred, and finally real. When dinner ended, Dad walked me to the door. "I still wish I had said this sooner," he said. "I'm proud of you, Elara." And for the first time in my life, I truly believed him. A month later, I was back in my office when my mother called. Her voice was shaking. "Your father collapsed during a board meeting. He's stable now, but the doctors say he needs rest." I drove straight to the hospital, my heart hammering. Seeing him hooked up to machines shook me in a way I hadn't expected. The man who once looked indestructible now looked small. Mortal. Humans. He smiled weakly when he saw me. "Don't look so scared, kiddo. I'm not going anywhere yet." But he handed me a sealed folder. "Open this if anything ever happens to me." "Promise me," I whispered, gripping his hand tightly. "Don't say that," he replied softly. "I've made peace with a lot of things thanks to you." He recovered slowly, and life returned to its strange, cautious normal. Until one afternoon, his lawyer called me. "Your father updated his will," he said gently. "He wanted you to know before the rest of the family." When I opened the document, I couldn't breathe. Half of Veylin Enterprises. The empire I had once thought I could never have was now in my name. The lawyer also told me my father had given ownership of the family estate to my foundation. He wanted the place to mean something again, not just to show off wealth or power. That night I visited my father. He was reading quietly, his favorite pen tucked into his shirt pocket. "You gave me everything," I said softly. "No, Elara. You gave me back my conscience," he replied. For the first time, the air between us felt weightless. Like all the ghosts of disappointment and pride had finally been buried. 6 months later, Veylin Enterprises held its annual charity gala. The same banquet where I had once been told to sit quietly. But now I wasn't in the shadows. I was at the center. The host introduced me as Elara Veylin, CEO of Veylin Foundation, Innovator of the Year. Same chandeliers. Same guests. But this time the applause was loud, real, and warm. I looked at my father. He was in the front row. His eyes were wet. He clapped harder than anyone else. My mother dabbed her eyes quietly beside him. Even Kalen looked proud, truly proud for the first time. I spoke calmly, my voice steady even though my chest was full of emotion. I was once told to stay quiet because important people were watching. I believed that too long. But respect isn't something people give you. You earn it by standing tall. Even when others try to make you small, the room will rise with you. The standing ovation felt like closure. Like peace. Like everything that had hurt me before finally made sense. After Veylin, Dad hugged me in front of everyone. "You were never my foolish daughter," he whispered. "I was the foolish father who couldn't see you." Outside, the night air was cool against my face. I looked up at the city skyline. The world felt quiet, finally quiet. The revenge I had imagined had never been about hurting anyone. It was about taking back my voice, the one people tried to silence, and using it to build something that mattered. And as I walked to my car, the applause still ringing in my ears, I realized the respect I had fought for was finally mine. I had earned it, all on my own.